June 12th meeting of the Franklin County Commissioners is now called to order. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Stottlemyre.
Present.
Commissioner Waymire.
Present.
Chair Howard. Vice Chair Dickinson.
Present.
Commissioner Dunn.
Present.
All right, please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by the invocation given by Pastor Bill Lee. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our heads. Father in heaven, we thank you for your grace. We thank you for the grace to live in a country like we do. We thank you for this democratic tradition. We thank you, Father, that you are the God over all. Watch over this meeting. Direct it, Lord. God, bless us. Bless this country. Bless us as citizens. Father, we just want to give you the glory and the thanksgiving for all that you have done for us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
All right, for our correspondence and organizational business, we are going to recognize Janice Lee for her years of service with Franklin County.
Yes, I'm up. I didn't realize. All right, well, Janice came to the sheriff's office from over at the treasurer's office here a couple of years ago and has become a vital part of the sheriff's office and what we do. And lots of times in our profession, the people that get all the glory and that people see as being the sheriff's office are the guys that are driving around in cars because, you know, it's pretty obvious who they are, you know. And those are the people that really everybody sees make things happen. But it's people like you, Janice, and the other girls that are here that are the foundation for that. And we have to have all that stuff going and all the administrative part for us to get out there and to do that job that the public sees everything. And there's things that happen that have to happen that most of the public just assumes it just happens naturally. Well, it doesn't, and you're part of that. And we appreciate what you've done for us on the last few years. We wish you the best in your retirement.
Thank you.
And thank you for all your service to Franklin County.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, this is where I do go through the line. Thank you.
One quick photo.
Over here.
Oh, where you want me?
Before you retire, just one photo.
There will be a reception for Janice on Friday at the Sam Smith Memorial Room at the Sheriff's Department from 2 to 4. From 2 to 4. So, awesome. Congratulations. All right, do we have public comment? All right. Just a second. A citizen desiring to speak on an item not on the agenda may do so at this time. Discussion is limited to 5 minutes. The commission will not take action or discuss items at this time. Discussion should be limited to matters of county commission business, and public comment is not permitted in regard to personnel matter or on pending legal matters. Items introduced under public comment may become agenda items at a later date.
Jean?
Good morning, Commissioners. Gene Hurt, 219 West 4th Street in Linden, Kansas. Okay, about a month ago, I brought out to this commission my concerns and the taxpayers that live out there in the county of the bridge that goes over I-35 that joins in with Proximity Park, and it also stems on the north side there by the Revival Church. They're out there on Montana Road. That's the bridge out there by Revival that goes across interstate and then goes into Proximity Park. Okay, that bridge. Okay. Now, at that time, when I brought it up, you know, Chairman Howard made the comment about, I think to Mr. Lee that I think that bridge is a KDOT bridge. So, meaning from what I got from that, as well as from Mr. Lee saying what he did that day on the bridge, that the county has no responsibility of that bridge. Okay? But they do. But now here's what I did that I had to do. Okay? I called KDOT in Topeka. They misdirected me the first time I called of who I should go to on this bridge. And what they do, they get messed up in contacting Concordia or down at Chanute or wherever it's at, okay? So they misdirected me. So I waited and waited to hear back the person that was to come to look at the bridge. Well, I didn't get anything. So then yesterday morning at 10:30, but before that, the night before, I got the message of who I needed to talk to, and I called this individual, but it was too late because the day was closing the day before yesterday. But anyway, I called again at it was 10:30 in the morning. When I called her, and her name is Donna Schmidt. She is the person that handles the conduct and the areas for securing problems that KDOT's responsible for in Franklin County. Now, she's from Garnett. Okay. All right. So, I didn't make communication, but she tried to get me that night. She was so concerned about what I threw out. She wasn't aware of it. So then when I called at their session, or when they opened up, the secretary told me, she said, Gene, you are to call Donna on her cell phone, and here it is. So she gave it to me. So I called her at 10:30. Remind me, now watch this time, 10:30. She told me, she said, Gene, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. She said, I didn't know the bridge was this bad. And she said, the crew I sent out right now, they are going on the interstate right now around Ottawa because the huge amount of traffic that flows on the interstate has to be dealt with first. Because we know that not many people probably are crossing that bridge. And I said, yeah, that's right, there's not. But I said, something's got to be done with it. And so I went over it with her again. And she says, I assure you, Gene, I care. Okay? And she said, I can't guarantee today. I can't. Because all this work's being done. But she said, I will do something. Well, so I left it at that. Didn't think anything was going to take place. But lo and behold, did I get a big surprise. Anyway, I got a phone call from a taxpayer that lives out there at 1:30 in the afternoon saying, my God, there's a massive crew out here filling up those potholes on the bridge with the proper stuff. And I couldn't believe it. I told him, I said, I know they were going to do something, but I didn't know it was going to be today. I really didn't. So after he assured me that that was done, I called Donna. And now this is at 2:30 in the afternoon. Okay?
Gene,
I called her.
it's time.
Pardon me?
At 5 minutes.
Okay, I'll finish it. Well, I'll finish it next week.
All right, thank you.
That bridge has been taken care of.
We have 2 items on the
Wait,
consent.
we have one more.
Oh, I'm
public
sorry, so sorry.
comment. Norman Woogie.
All right.
Norman Woogie, 3790 Pawnee Road. An ex-county commissioner spoke last week here and said there would be higher taxes. Is that your mentality? You are all guilty of promoting such travesty. This county and this city are sneaking in even more taxes on the people without a vote of the people. I ask, is this how the people should be treated? You can get by with this type of behavior for a while. And there are some stores charging above 10% taxes on sales taxes. Democracy. This is not the way the democracy works. When I left this meeting last week, I traveled to Nebraska. I buy a lot of stuff in Nebraska. City of Lincoln is booming with growth, excellent roads, no potholes in the streets, and even the county roads are groomed. Their total tax is 7%. No tax on food, and no tax on prescriptions, and no county sales tax. There was a vote of the people to increase the tax 7% to 1.25%. That doesn't sound like much. That equals more than $1 million a month taken from the people, a $13 million a year for 6 years. It barely passed. Millions upon millions is pumped into the South Industrial Park of Ottawa. For what? Remember the Walmart DC Center and the American Eagle didn't need the North Industrial Park to move to Ottawa. In the Bible, some of the people in power were corrupt, money changers. I went online and have a better understanding how the guys reasoned. Your track record isn't good. Remember the crazy motocross, the abuse of power, a bad reflection on you. I know you don't like us speaking out. We were criticized for speaking our minds. We, the people, are accused of not knowing how things are in the government. The things is we know. We would know more and be better informed if all of you were kinder to us, the people. If the people worked as diligently as we do, you would not be blind with greed and power, per se, the money changers. You are not the solution, you are the problem. Clean up your act. Check it out, or check out. When it comes to the budget, organizations come begging for money. Can't you see the ploys to feed their turf? Evidently, you must get high on the Santa Claus feeling and wasting money. Get smart, get wise, work hard. Be good to the citizen. Don't do things just to get elected. That's not going to work for you. God doesn't like money changers, as written in Matthew, Mark, and John. And when the administrator speaks to the people, it would be nice if he came up here and spoke to us so that he could be on camera. And the other thing is, it seems like a guy, even on vacation, could take 90 minutes out of his time and come and represent the people. He's well paid. Thank you.
All right. We have 2 items on the consent agenda, the commission meeting minutes for June 5th and the commission study session meetings for June 10th. Do you have any questions, corrections, or do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the consent agenda?
Do you have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Stottlemyre?
Yeah.
Commissioner Waymire?
Yes.
Commissioner Dunn?
Yes.
Vice Chair Dickinson?
Yes. right, we'll move on to our items of business. I will let you know that we do have a third item of business that we are adding. And we also have an executive session that is going to be after the commissioner comments. So the first item of business is to consider for approval entering into the audit engagement letter with Rodney and Burns CPA LLC. Derek?
Yeah, we talked about this at Monday's study session. Rodney, at the time, went over our audit for 2018 and discussed whether or not the board would like to retain his services for 2019 as well. The feel that I got at the time was that the board would like to do that. Certainly as staff, we would recommend doing that. That being said, what you have before you is the engagement letter, which is basically the contract for his services. I've reviewed it. It's a very similar contract to what we always see. I don't have any concerns with it, but we'll try and answer any questions that you all have.
Rodney does a good job. I've only ever heard good things from staff, and the product that we see is very good. We get a lot of good feedback from him too on the audit, so.
Well, and the Association of Counties actually recommends, he's among those they highly recommend. I mean, he's a tough auditor, but he's very informative and does a good job of staying on top of all the legislative changes. He's been a good resource with regard to the tax lid. He's incredibly helpful. So.
Very
I
well.
first met Rodney 18 years ago when he was doing ours. And there was 2 or 3 years that he didn't. Somebody wanted to, but I was glad to see him back when he came back. So we never, in all those, it never was for lack of doing his job. It was just, they changed for a couple of years, and it was very obvious how good a job he. Sometimes maybe you have to see that to know how good a job somebody is doing, Yeah. But he's always done a very good job for the county.
I'd just like to share with you guys, there's not that many audit firms in the state that, are recommended by other county clerks. And I know us here in southeast Kansas are really, feel fortunate to be in close proximity to Rodney and he be willing to take on our county. And as Don said, we did have an audit done by some other firms for a few years. And Debbie, my deputy, was there during some of those times, and she said the feedback and the paperwork we got was not near as extensive as what it is with Rodney. Rodney does an excellent job of preparing our audit corrections, the things that he found that needed to be changed and getting them corrected are in our books so that we can go back later and see what was the result of the audit. So Rodney does do a really great job.
Good auditors like having a good doctor for this organization, so I'd be happy to make a motion to approve the audit engagement letter with Rodney and Burns CPA LLC for the 2019 calendar year.
Second.
Commissioner Waymire?
Yes.
Commissioner Dunn?
Yes.
Commissioner Stottlemyre?
Yes.
Vice Chair Dickinson?
Yes. All right, item 2, consider for approval the consent and acknowledgement to assignment and payments and security agreement.
Yeah, our bond counsel, Tyler Ellsworth, is down today to talk us through this. This is actually something that we did back in 2017 as well. Pertains to the hotel project down the south part of Ottawa, so I'll let him talk through the nuances of that.
All right. Thanks, Derek, and good morning, Vice Chair and Commissioners. As Derek said, I'm Tyler Ellsworth with the law firm of Kutak Rock, the county's bond counsel. And in that role, in addition to doing traditional governmental financing, we frequently have opportunity to work on economic development matters, such as the transient guest tax agreement with the hotel. We have been in contact with the group that is putting the hotel together. They've informed us that after a couple of false starts since 2017, then a year ago, and to now, they're ready to proceed with construction. And so they have requested that under the transient guest tax rebate that you all entered with them in 2017, your consent is required if they want to essentially have those payments of the transient guest tax when they become eligible for those payments to be made directly to their lender rather than to them. It's a fairly routine request, but it's something that under the agreement, you all are required to consent to, or at least your consent is required to be requested. And so we're not changing any of the terms of the agreement, but because they have a new lender in place, they've indicated they're ready to move forward. We're here this morning requesting your consent to direct these payments when they're due from the developer group to the bank. Happy to answer any additional questions on that.
And Tyler is, he's talking about when the payments are due, and I would also clarify if the payments are due. You will recall that there were several criteria that needed to be met in order for the company to get the TGT rebate to begin with. And so if those criteria aren't met, then they won't get a rebate at all, and we won't be, should you approve this, we won't be sending money to their lender. But if, of course, they do meet those, then that's effectively what this document does, I suspect, and you would probably know, Tyler, but this was part of the what they gave up in order to get their financing from their lender. And so they needed a loan to presumably to complete this project. Lender said, okay, as part of the return, we want this assignment. And so that's what we need your approval of, should you seek to approve that.
That's correct.
Questions?
Are these the same people still from the original proposal?
It is, Mike Works is still involved in the Ottawa Lodging entity that your agreement is with. And he has taken on an additional partner, another partner out of Iowa, Hawkeye Hotels Group. And so they are assisting, I think, in some of the financing on that side of things. But Mike Works is still involved.
Our agreement is still for the same amount of years and for the same rebate? But we're
Absolutely.
just starting whenever they get it
Absolutely.
developed, okay.
And actually, under the original agreement, which is still in place, they have until September 2nd of this year to get started on construction. So they're kind of down to the wire here. It's time for them to get cracking, and it sounds
And
like
at
they're
that
ready.
point, then we would have to approve a new agreement?
Yeah, or you could take action to notice them up that they're in default of the agreement and look at remedies at that point. Yes.
So this is the last step before they can actually get started then?
That's my understanding, is that they're ready to go. And I think they'd like to get started just as soon as they can in the next couple of weeks, assuming that we get all these sort of loose ends tied up. All right. So if we have your consensus on this, Derek, I don't know whether a vote is necessary. We can certainly do that. I'll defer to you on.
Yeah, I would ask that we make a motion to approve it, should the board desire to do so. And I'll clarify one more time. This does not change the material terms of the agreement that was executed in 17. I mean, you look at the attached agreement, it's an agreement you're not even a party to, but per the original TGT agreement, you have to consent to the attached agreement because it is the county's TGT funds that are ultimately being assigned. And so, but nothing else changes.
All right, then I would look for a motion to approve the consent and acknowledgement to assignment and payments and security agreement.
I'll move.
Second.
Commissioner Dunn?
Yes.
Commissioner Stottlemyre?
Yeah.
Commissioner Waymire?
Yes.
Vice Chair Dickinson?
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you. All right, our third item of business, Mr. Larry Walrod is going to talk about the comprehensive plan.
Hey, good morning, Madam Chairman, Commissioners. It's not really about the plan itself. It's a request basically to authorize the planning director to initiate the public notices that the planning commission would like to consider an amendment to the comprehensive plan as well as the county zoning regulations. There are two manners in which these items can be initiated. One of them is by the governing body, and the other is by the Planning Commission. However, since the Planning Commission is going to be meeting for a little while, it's desirable to get started with this process. And so I'm here this morning asking that the county commissioners authorize the planning director to initiate the consideration of the amending the comprehensive plan as well as the zoning regulations to address renewable energy as a land use, and then to establish criteria within the framework of our zoning regulations that would set up some basic standards for these type of facilities so that they are recognized as a land use, but try to make that land use more compatible with other existing developments throughout the county. Today, we have no regulations for the type of facilities that has been brought to my attention. A number of the counties around us have been addressing these renewable energy facilities, and I'm talking about a commercial grade. I think some of you may recall that in 2008, we did address it for individuals because of the public interest that was out there. We did establish regulations relative to the wind energy conversion facilities for private on-site facilities. These were basically the windmills. A little later, there was a lot of public interest that's come up more recently concerning solar energy conversion, but on a private individual basis. Many of these are on the rooftops of the structures, although they could be a freestanding structure too. And that has been pretty well addressed through the building codes. So we haven't had to really address it specifically as a separate land use. It's just an accessory type activity associated with primarily residential development. We have an individual that has brought this to my attention. Kevin Spencer is here this morning. But what I would like for you to do is to give us direction to initiate actions to encompass these into our regulations, particularly the comprehensive plan, recognizing wind energy or solar energy, any of the renewable energy conversion facilities as a land use. We haven't done that today. If these come in on any major scale, they do modify the landscape. They will have an impact on surrounding other developments throughout the county and land uses. So we need to make certain that we have addressed that within our comprehensive plan. Several of our sister counties around have either adopted regulations or have been giving consideration to them. Lynn County, for instance, has declared a moratorium for wind energy conversion facilities until they amend their comprehensive plan and develop regulations addressing it as a land use. And that's just one of several different examples, but a number of the counties have been involved with that in recent times. In 2008, we didn't have a lot of interest in commercial type facilities here in the county. It was basically individual. So we didn't bother to go ahead and try to pick that up as a land use issue in the comprehensive plan or the zoning regulations. And I would like to bring this to your attention and get some direction from you then to go ahead and proceed in trying to develop provisions within our comprehensive plan addressing it as a land use, and then to have standards and the development standards for those kinds of activities.
So this would only be to give notice, essentially, that the conversation is going to happen. At that point, the details would be discussed in the public, and public could give feedback, and I mean, this would only begin the process.
This will begin the process. This is not the final answer, but it gets this started. We can start with the Planning Commission, get
get input through the public hearing process,
So we'll go through planning commission and then,
through the planning commission. All of this has to go to the planning commission first by statute. That's a requirement. It would have to be public hearings held by the planning commission, and they're going to forward then their recommendations to the governing body here to take the final action.
more or less what you'd be asking is for us to notify the public that we will be discussing
Yes, you'll be
whether
authorizing,
windmills
yes, authorizing me
and
to.
regulation, whether wind, do you have an issue? Can you not remain quiet? Whether or not windmills would be permitted in certain areas in the regulations?
And trying to recognize them as a land use, because today we don't have anything.
I actually had a question about if, what the county, because I know we didn't have any, so so I think it is a good thing. We do need to move forward. We need to to know where we stand as a county on it. So, I think it's something we need to address.
Yeah, and to clarify, the reason, it's the reason we're trying to do this is the same reason we have zoning and a comp plan. It's to protect the landowners, it's to protect the board. As it exists today, we don't have standards to regulate this type of thing, and so what effectively we would be doing is saying, okay, planning commission, you guys just decide what you want to do without any real guidance, send it up to us. So you effectively have a group of people that's just making perhaps arbitrary decisions to do what they want, whereas if we have a set of guidelines in place that will allow planning commissions to refer to those, it helps ensure that citizens get consistent treatment. It helps ensure that you guys have something to look at. And as we sit here today, Larry hasn't even drafted these, but we have to have permission from you to get the process started. So if you grant that today, Larry will draft them. I will help him review them. They will go to the planning commission in an open meeting. Hopefully there will be good discussion there. They will come up to you in another open meeting. Public will have ample time to offer input into what these regulations read, but we just need you all to start the process today.
I think it'd be only logical for everyone to know where the proverbial goalposts are when it comes to.
And I don't believe that's necessary at this time, that we have to declare a moratorium. We haven't had any real pressure, but I think that this is immediately on our horizon, that we need to begin initiating addressing it.
I know some counties have actually brought this up as a vote. That's an option.
I think myself, I imagine Kevin too, has got solicitations for these solar farms, 120 acres or more. They're advertising, looking for these huge solar farms. So I think it's time we gave the planning commission some guidelines to go ahead with this.
Well, I certainly want to thank Kevin for bringing this to my attention, because no one has approached the planning department regarding this. And we certainly weren't aware that there was any real interest, although I think I was somewhat aware that there have been activities in some of our sister counties in their, nearby.
Serving on planning board for several years, this has always been one of our biggest problems when we run into something that's not governed in any direction. We had no guidance. I know we had we went through with office buildings. We never figured we'd have office buildings in the county, but we ended up with some office buildings in the county, and we didn't have any regulations. So, and it wasn't good or bad to the person, just we had no guidelines to go by at all. And I know wind generators was another one, and I could see how this one too, when people start coming to you and you have nothing good or bad to go by, and it would be open public meetings of the planning board, and they'll have an opportunity for them and the public to discuss their feelings on it, and what they'd like to think is good or bad. So I think it's a good idea that you visit it now. It's just one of them things that's gonna be coming, like it will be.
And just to be clear, because I want the board's expectations to, or I guess I want the board to understand what we're actually doing here. We are not, Larry is not for or against this idea. This isn't Larry putting together a recommendation as to whether or not this should be allowed to happen. It is more of a, if the board believes that this should happen, here are the guidelines under which we believe you should authorize that. And so it's not Larry opining on the validity of these types of energy sources. It's just trying to set up an objective set of guidelines, so.
And I will be interested to hear what the public has to say about it, what there is, so. So what kind of action do we need to take then? Just approval for Larry to begin to address?
Yes, I think that approval of a motion directing me to proceed with initiating these proposed amendments to our comprehensive plan and to our zoning regulations. And by statute, these matters have to go through the planning commission through the public hearing process.
Do I have a motion to that effect?
I'll make a motion to allow the planning director to proceed with alternate energy rules, regulations, or
Issue notice. Second motion.
Commissioner Stottlemyre?
Yeah.
Commissioner Waymire? Commissioner Dunn?
yes.
Vice Chair Dickinson?
Yes.
Thank you, commissioners.
All right, we will move on to staff reports. Eric,
Yeah, I don't have anything for you today.
Mr. Lee.
So yesterday, through a mutual aid agreement, we sent a couple of trucks and drivers up to Douglas County to help with their tornado cleanup. And we'll be doing that again if called upon. One of the things that I've noticed since I've been here, the surrounding counties all communicate with each other and are willing to help out in times of need. So we're helping out Douglas County at the present time. Last week, we had the Kansas Department of Emergency Management down. They did a preliminary assessment on our flood damage, and we easily qualified. We only took them to a handful of locations and easily passed the threshold, the dollar amount, which was just under $100,000. So they, after they hit that number, they went back to Topeka. So that will continue the ball rolling in that endeavor. We'll be working on that probably the rest of the year, documenting and correcting these issues and communicating with the FEMA folks. Along those same lines, tomorrow I'll be meeting with a consultant to look at the road north of Lane, Virginia Road north of Lane, Colorado south of Pomona, and there's a spot on Nebraska just south of Labette Terrace. During times of flood, the water rolling over the road causes some severe erosion. This happens flood after flood after flood. I'm hoping to find some solutions so that the next time, and there will be a next time, that possibly we won't have this sort of damage. So just in the very early stages of looking into that, looking for a long-term fix. And then again, I'll be meeting with a contractor today to look at some roads in the northern part of the county, hard surface roads that are in need of some serious attention. So both of those things will be coming back before you at some point, possibly. I just want to give you the heads up that these are some of the things that we're working on, in addition to trying to correct all the multitude of issues that are out there right now.
Sheriff, do you have anything?
kind of had a busy couple weeks. Just to kind of update you, the board, I have met with the city of Pomona, referenced the contract that exists for law enforcement services. If you'll recall, we had gone several years without increasing that. Then a couple of years ago, it ended up being like a 10% increase, and there was some little heartburn with that situation. I've talked with Janet and HR a little bit, and the administrator. I have met with Pomona to let them know that to anticipate a 2.5% increase. We increased it last time in 2018. It stayed flat for 2019, so this year we're being paid the same as we did last year. But moving forward for in 2020, we anticipate that there will be a 2.5% increase, and the clerk has, and I talk about it, and we haven't, it seems like that's going to be an acceptable change for their governing body as well. So just so that you're aware. Also went to the Lane council meeting Monday night, and as has been talked about before, there's a plan to put together a municipal court for several of the small cities in the county, so that they will share a judge and a codes enforcement officer, and all through contract. And Lane voted to approve that Monday night. I don't know that it was necessarily an easy decision for them. It was not a quiet decision. They had a pretty full house for that. They actually recessed their meeting Monday instead of adjourning, and they will be meeting Tuesday evening at 5:30 to kind of continue on with some of that that's going on. There's also talk about working with the county, with Road and Bridge, about redoing a couple roads over there. And so those were things that were being talked about, and their community is definitely engaged in that process over there as well. We had Safety Day this last over the weekend out at Walmart, and Emergency Management set that up, and with all the emergency first responders from the county being out there taking part of Safety Day, it went very well. It was a good time. Got a little more sun than we should have, but it was a good time. And Jayhawker Days was this weekend down in and Williamsburg as well. And so the communities are all active. We're getting ready to get into that fair time of year, and so we're staying busy with those things. But those are the things that we like to be in the community engagement part of that. So if you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move into commissioner reports.
I don't have anything.
David, you said you'll be up in the Wellsville area looking at roads. Will you take a look at that? Are you going to look at that subdivision the gentleman spoke about?
That's one of the areas that we'll be looking at, yes, sir.
I wonder, something I'd like us to discuss at some point, I don't know, I mean, since Larry's here and road department's represented, the standard for a subdivision, if someone was to put in a subdivision, which is where we have a lot of our problems, is, I think, 2 layers of chip seal over just crushed gravel.
Yeah, it's not adequate.
They end up being some of our poorest roads, and it just almost immediately becomes a detriment to us to fix. I wonder if there'd be interest in looking at a more adequate standard, and these are certainly our weakest areas.
Yeah, I have been researching a little bit what other communities do, what their subdivision design standards are, actually what their road design standards are. And we'll be bringing at some point that type of information to you. I've driven most of the subdivisions now, and you know they don't get a lot of heavy traffic, which is a good thing, but they also don't stand up to the wear and tear of even the local traffic. And so we need something a little more adequate for the long term.
My worry is I don't think we have any proposed subdivisions in front of us, but times are good. There is a lot of building, and
Exactly.
it would be a time to change it after somebody's decided to invest, get a plan, and, you know,
Right.
is ready to do something.
You know,
This would be
whenever
the time.
when we accept those subdivisions, we are accepting all the responsibility for the roads, which includes however they were constructed. We haven't had a whole lot of say into how that happens. Going forward, we need to be hand in hand with the developers and the contractors building those roads so that we get good roads that are going to last for years and really decades to come.
Hopefully that's something we can look at sooner than later then.
Yes.
Good idea. All right. Don?
You know, I talked to you about one of those subdivisions up there. I kind of give you a little history of back a long time ago. When I'll meet with you later and talk about it. I had Barbara Anderson, which is Regional Project Manager for Business and Community Development. I invited her down. I know she was at the Richmond meeting, talking with them too. After that night, her down to Rantoul, and she's there's some new money this year that's been allocated for rural development, and we're talking down there about upgrading their water system and their sewer system and their community park. And I'm also trying to give them some money through our health grant here too. The bathrooms are tied to that, you know, community health. So, and they did, they haven't made a full decision, as the sheriff mentioned, yet, but I know the board is in favor of the joint effort between, they didn't vote or anything on it yet, but it sounded like they're, at this point, they seem to be pretty favorable with it going forward and happening. So it looks like something, it's good that they're taking their time, you know, and doing a lot of discussing and talking about it. I'll give a little on the Mr. Kime. I talked to him the other day with Kime Trucking, and things are really going good at Wellsville at the truck center. They're working on all three projects, almost like they have three different crews in there. They just kind of rotate around, and so they're progressing really fast up there with that development. I know he wants to get it in as soon as possible. So that's about, it hadn't had anything. I'll be going to Wellsville this evening, and I'll update that. Hadn't been any other meetings here lately.
Last Wednesday night, I went to the Ottawa City regular meeting, at the commission meeting, and they did a lot of maintenance items, but they also approved the sewer improvements for Proximity Park. So that's moving ahead. That's awesome to hear. On Friday, I went to the First Friday Forum. Dr. Levi Russell, who is an economics professor at OU, was the speaker. And the numbers that he gave about Franklin County, I think most counties would be thrilled to be hearing the information that he shared about Franklin County. He shared that our unemployment rate is very near a record low. He shared that our labor force numbers are growing. He shared that our median household income is increasing, and the number of people, the percentage of our citizens who are below the poverty level is decreasing. People that are on SNAP, or which most people know as food stamps, that number has been declining since 2012. House prices are rising, but the people are coming in and they can afford the prices that we have. He did touch a little bit on the trade war and how tariffs with China and possibly with Mexico might affect Franklin County. But anyway, the numbers, the information was very positive about Franklin County. And then last night, or yesterday morning, I went to the Chamber of Commerce board meeting. Legacy Square is a couple of weeks behind, wonder of all wonders because of the weather, but they feel like that they can catch up on that. They talked about the board retreat and some of the information that came up from that. And then the next big item will be their July 4th Chautauqua Days and some of the things that they have planned for that. So anyway, that's all that I have. So now we will go into executive session for how long?
20 minutes with the board and the counselor to discuss a pending legal matter pursuant to the COMA exception that allows for privileged communications between the attorney and client.
Okay. So we will go into executive session at 9:20 until 9:40.
Make a motion to that effect?
Yes, need a motion.
Second.
Commissioner Waymire?
Yes.
Commissioner Dunn?
Yes.
Commissioner Stottlemyre?
Yes.
Vice Chair Dickinson?
Yes. Okay, we are out of executive session. No action was taken. And if there is no other business, I would look for a motion to adjourn.
To adjourn?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.